This is Leeds Student Radio.
Sounds
Students
in Leeds.
delivering over 100 hours of broadcasting made by 300 students every week.
Hello.
Hello. Hello and welcome.
And
it's all about you.
you.
This is Leeds Student Radio.
Would you say we'd be venturing into a zone of danger?
Danger Zone. Every Friday from 7 p.m. at Fab Cafe. Playing the pop and rock anthems you love. With drink deals all night long. There's only one place where everyone's your wingman. Danger Zone. Only at Fab Cafe.
a family-run business with over 40 years' experience in providing affordable and reliable accommodation.
Winners of the Leeds Landlord Award.
You should look no further than Spencer Properties when choosing where to live next year.
Spencer Properties own all the homes they let out and work closely with the Knowledge Project to promote safe, reliable housing for student and professional communities.
Visit spencer-properties.co.uk for more information and follow @SpencerProp on Twitter for all their latest listings.
Spencer Properties, the #1 provider of quality accommodation in Leeds.
This is Leeds Student Radio.
Live from Leeds University Union.
At the heart of your student life.
The things that matter to you.
To you.
To you. To you. Your news.
Your views.
Your life in Leeds.
Live at 5.
This is The Beat in association with Amber Cars.
Download our app for the quickest taxi service in Leeds.
Broadcasting 24 hours a day from Leeds University Union.
The sound
of students in Leeds.
This is Leeds Student Radio.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Natural World here on Leeds Student Radio. You're listening to Emma Caton
And Ekbal Hussain.
and as ever we've got a lot of stuff planned today, from fascinating facts, latest discoveries and how you can get involved in the area and all that kind of thing, you know, the introduction. But today we're going to start off a slight bit different to how we usually do, going a bit off topic of the natural world. Now, we decided to just mention this because it's something we're very excited about. We did brush upon this in a previous episode, but I think Ekbal's very excited to tell us about this. So why don't you explain the news?
Well, I wanted to basically celebrate the new comet lander, Philae and Rosetta. I think we mentioned it, like you said, a few weeks ago. Essentially, the European Space Agency, essentially Europe, has sent a satellite towards a comet that's, I think, 6 billion kilometers away by Jupiter. And they sent this satellite 10 years ago, and it reached there earlier this year. And quite impressively, from this satellite, it ejected a landing probe. And this landing probe has managed to land on this comet. It's called Comet 67P. And for me, it is probably the most remarkable scientific achievement in astronomy since the landing on the moon, because
it's pretty
I
incredible.
mean, think about it. We have caught a comet and then landed something on it. It is absolutely amazing. I mean, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And we actually saw an animation, didn't we, the other day of they actually showed the satellite catching up with the comet, and it was incredible how perfect the course of the satellite was to land on this comet. It was absolutely perfect. If they'd been slightly off, the whole thing just wouldn't have worked.
Wouldn't have worked.
And I don't even understand how they managed to calculate this. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Rocket science, you know. They're all smart people out there.
Yeah, it's the one time when the phrase "it's not rocket science" doesn't exactly work, because it isn't. It's very difficult.
I have a good friend who knows a lot more about this. My friend David. Shout out to David. Hey, David. He knows a lot more about this. It is really cool stuff.
It is incredible.
So, the satellite has been orbiting this comet for a few months now. But, the extraordinary thing that happened last Wednesday that has basically shook the world in terms of news, headlines, etc., is this lander. And it was quite, scary, because the lander was meant to fire a booster rocket, and slowly, gently descend. But the booster failed.
Unfortunately.
The booster failed. But then it was meant to harpoon. It was really cool. Harpoon a comet. How cool does that sound? Well, it was meant to land and stick out some harpoons to help it fix itself on its base. But this didn't work either. So the lander landed where it was intended to land, then it bounced back up, landed again, bounced back up, and landed again. Terrifying few moments for all the scientists.
But they were all tense there, just watching, like, oh my god, is this going to work? Is this going to work?
And the scary thing now is they don't know where it is.
Yes, they don't know where it is.
Yeah. They know it's on the comet somewhere because it's working and it's sending back data, but they don't actually know exactly where it is. Then sadly, it stopped working now. It's no longer in working as of, I think, the last couple of days, mainly because it bounced 3 times and it landed by a cliff. It's by a cliff somewhere, and the solar panels that were meant to help recharge its battery, because of the cliff, it's not getting enough light to recharge the batteries. So yeah,
that's a bit of a shame.
It's not working at the moment, but it's still there, and it did all the scientific achievements of its first phase. So it sends back a hell of a load of data, which has made a lot of scientists very happy. So they'll be spending months analyzing this. But this comet is moving towards the sun, and because the probe is still there, when it gets closer to the sun, there'll be more opportunities for it to get more sunlight, so it might come back alive.
There is reason for hope.
So they say it's gone to hibernation. It's not dead, it's gone hibernation mode. So it'll be back. It will be back. And not to forget, the satellite itself is still orbiting the planet.
Of course,
and that's doing its own set of measurements and scientific, musings of this comet. So exciting, very, very exciting time for all people, especially rocket scientists.
Yeah, so absolutely incredible.
Keep an eye out for that.
There's some very good videos of the people celebrating when it lands, and it's some people just can't quite grasp like how important this is, how incredible an achievement this is for mankind.
Oh yes, I mean this is probably the most amazing event in cometology, if that's a word.
Cometology.
Is that even a word?
Well, it's a word now. You just made it a word.
But I mean, because it's so important, it sets the pace, sets the standard for all new space missions now.
It does. I mean, even if something does go wrong now, we have still achieved this incredible thing that it has actually landed on a comet.
It's past all expectations already, and it's still got months. It doesn't reach the sun, the closest point to the sun, until next August. So we've got months of data collection and great science to be made yet.
We do. So we've got all that to look forward to in the future.
Maybe we'll talk about it in August.
Yes, maybe next year. Just see what else is new in the missions. But I mean, it was kind of a good thing to bring up because it kind of sets in the scene for the rest of our topic today, really, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. And it's incredible that we're learning all these new, fantastic things about space. But there are a lot of things that we still don't really know about what's on our own doorstep. And obviously the main thing I'm talking about here is our oceans. So we're going to have a very ocean-themed kind of show today where we talk about everything to do with the oceans, the wildlife, the features, and, well, what we know, really, because there's so much that we don't know about our oceans, and that is the incredible thing. They take up so much space on our planet, but they're still very, very alien to us and very unknown. So we're going to talk today about some of the deep ocean creatures that have been discovered, what we know, what we don't know, all the hidden secrets such as lost kingdoms and even alien activity. There are things people have found in the oceans that believe that this is proof that there are aliens out there. So no, there are a lot of incredible things that are to be found in our oceans and things that we should still be excited that are still to be discovered. So
actually, it works quite well because there are some scientists, and there's maybe a group of scientists who think that the water we have on our planet actually originally came from comets. So that's one of the reasons. Yes. That's one of the reasons this study is so important, because it's looking at the origins of water and potentially life.
Exactly. So yes, the Rosetta mission does tie in very well with our theme, really, about all to do with the oceans. And humans have had a very big interest in oceans back in prehistoric times, because obviously back then there was fishing and things like that, and people kind of started to notice things like the tides and the currents. It was hard not to, really, if you were going out, and this is really where kind of oceanography, the study of the oceans, kind of began with in prehistoric times, when these people were kind of noticed these things about the ocean. And it was, in fact, the first written observations about tides and currents was actually made by Aristotle, who's a very, very famous Greek philosopher and scientist. And he was alive, I think it was about 400, 300 BC. So, and he was the first like kind of person who kind of wrote down in books about, this is kind of happening with the oceans. What's going on here? What's all this about?
You can imagine before then as well, the ocean has always been a point of fascination for humanity. It's something that's vast, particularly before people started exploring it. Even actually when they started exploring, it's something you stand on a beach and you look out and it's this expanse of water that it's almost godly, and that's probably why a lot of ocean deities were born at the time, because it's so big, it's incomprehensible. It's quite amazing.
And I actually, this is kind of very kind of strange thing to bring up, but actually, if you've ever read the Narnia series, there was always the god in that was always referred to as the emperor over the sea, because at the end of the world, there must have been something out there at the very world's end, and that's where this idea came from. That and like you said, it's a vast ocean, and to begin with, people wouldn't dare ever leave sight of the shore because they're like, what's going to happen and all that. They just didn't know what was out there. So I think really, if you think back to it, you've got to kind of appreciate how brave some of these people were to kind of venture into the unknown. There was this vast ocean. They hadn't got a clue what was out there, and they just proceeded anyway. And there is actually a very famous saying, which kind of, one of these very metaphor things now, which is, to cross the ocean, you must first have the courage to lose sight of the shore. And that's used a lot in I always love that quote.
It is great.
And it's very true about everything, you have to kind of go away from what you're used to and what you're comfortable with, and kind of stray out and beyond to find these incredible things.
Well, if you think about it, some of the first seafarers were the Vikings, the Nordics, actually, weren't they? They must have taken. Well, I think they're well depicted in modern day.
Yeah, they're some of the most well known,
brave and
fearless,
foolhardy to some extent sometimes with the fearlessness. But yeah, it must have taken a certain amount of bravery to face that expense and say, "I am going to conquer you."
Exactly, and it's in particular as well with the Polynesians as well. They were kind of notably amazing seafarers. Because the Polynesia Islands, they're just dotted all around the Pacific Ocean. The Pacific is vast. And
understatement of the century.
Understatement, it actually is. It's absolutely huge, the Pacific. And I think the thing that always kind of amazed me was Easter Island and how that was first inhabited. Now, Easter Island is one of the if you're moving away from kind of Australia and New Zealand across in a kind of an easterly direction, Easter Island is the very last island in the Polynesian Islands, and it's quite far away from the others. And by chance, the Polynesians one day left one of the other islands that are quite close together and managed to find Easter Island. And this is complete chance, they reckon this only would have happened once. There's no other Polynesians that came and inhabited Easter Island because it's such a tiny dot in the middle of the ocean. It was incredible that they actually managed to find it and set up a colony on there. But I mean, I think it's situations like that where you think they must venture out into the oceans with this feeling that they're probably never going to come back because they're just going to keep going and going and going. And, it's just incredible. I always wonder how it happened, really, how they had the courage. It's quite incredible. I mean, now with all our maps and things and, we're very
satellites, you can't get lost anymore, really, to be fair.
Exactly.
Well, you can by the plane.
But God, I can get lost in one street in Leeds, so...
but the world has become much more accessible nowadays. And looking at the history of cartography, actually, it's so interesting how they decided to map the world. Before it was unmapped, before it was flat, right? Now it's not flat anymore. It's all these curves and shorelines and islands and everything.
Yeah, there's so many features under the ocean that people just don't appreciate because you can't see it, so it's not there to be appreciated. But no, it is all fascinating. And since these prehistoric times, up to just a couple of hundred years ago, exploration of the oceans was just primarily for drawing maps for trade routes. And it was mainly limited to the surface of the ocean, and the only animals that were kind of really discovered in the oceans was what fishermen brought up in their fishing nets. So very, very, very little was known. And, it's kind of in the last 500 years or so where things have been started to be discovered more. I think it was in 1513 when a French sailor first identified the Gulf Stream. And the current was well known to mariners then because they kind of noticed it was there when they were sailing their boats. But no, it was this man. I'm going to pronounce it completely wrong now. I think it's Jean Pont de Leon. which is a really cool name.
Don't ask me to do it.
And he was the one who first kind of he measured kind of took note of really that the Gulf Stream was there. And it was actually Ben Franklin who first did a proper study on the Gulf Stream back in the 1500s and whenever it was his life. And he was the one who actually named it. It was Ben Franklin who named it the Gulf Stream. And he did several studies on it, of the water temperatures and things like that. So he was the first one who kind of really made a kind of big scientific discovery on one of the major features in the oceans, really. And you know, since then it's... It actually didn't get printed on the first maps, though, until the 1700s, when it was really recognised then, which is surprising, because it's like, it was well used, the Atlantic Ocean, by that time, but it was only really mapped properly.
Oh, right. Okay.
Like the length of it, how far it went, until... So maybe they just knew it was there, they just didn't know the extent of it.
Well, they didn't know the significance of it, to be fair, probably, because
yes.
the Gulf Stream is really, really important in managing the climate of the British Isles, really, and Western Europe.
Oh, it's
I won't
very
go into
true.
the details, that's probably for another day, the details of how the Gulf Stream affects our weather.
You'd probably just...
It's so important. It's so important.
It is very important. The Gulf Stream has huge, massive significance. And yeah, I think since these times, mainly studies on the ocean have been done for naval purposes, for, you know, like submarines and things like that. And in fact, one of my lecturers from last year, who actually took me for oceanography, he actually has done a lot of work for the Navy, kind of mapping these landmarks in the ocean so that the submarines know where they are, they know where to like hide from enemies and things like that. And oceanography is such an important thing for our Navy. Obviously it is, because we need to know what's out there, what's all these features, just so, you know, we can use that to the advantage, really.
An interesting story you said about Navy. Yes, it's true. Most of this stuff was done by the Navy, and essentially the start of the study of plate tectonics happened because of this as well. There was a naval ship doing the Navy survey, ocean surveys in the Eastern Pacific in the 60s, and a geologist said, "Why don't we stick a magnetic device on the end of your ship? Do you think it's okay?" And they said, "Oh, it's fine, just do it." And from there is where they got the ideas of plate tectonics started taking root and everything.
Wasn't it? That actually does remind me that, because this lecturer did actually tell us that the Navy did know about plate tectonics 10 years before the scientists did.
Well, they knew the observations, but they didn't put two and two together and call it plate tectonics. They knew everything about the oceans way before any scientists did, really.
Yeah, it's quite incredible, really, because the Navy has done incredible work, and that is the reason why they did find it. And they have found many incredible things in the ocean since then, because obviously it's very important. I know it sounds weird saying this, but it's very important to humans. It's very significant to us. It's obviously very important to humans. So there's a lot of more study done on it. So I know this is where we are getting quite a lot of information about the landmarks and things in our oceans and
even
processes.
Still, there's the big explorations in the Arctic at the moment, because the ice is receding, the ice is disappearing. We can get more access to the ocean bottom in the Arctic. So the Arctic explorations is actually a big hot topic at the moment.
Oh, it really... So. This actually reminds me of something I read the other day about... it was kind of like I'm trying to think how to explain it. It was kind of like a device, like a drone, that was shaped like a dolphin, which they use they control it along the seabed, and it collects sediment to like put forward things about climate change, to see how our climate has changed by using the sediment from the seafloor. And it's this strange dolphin drone that they use for it. It's actually quite incredible. So I think they probably use it for, you know, reasons not to disturb wildlife down there, maybe, or something like that. But I thought it was quite funny when I saw that they were actually using this drone. So. But no, in recent years it's been very important for, you know, people to find out about the oceans and things, and obviously just for general interest now, more scientists are getting involved in things like marine zoology and things, just purely out of curiosity. And why not? Because there's so many things in the oceans that are still to be found. And I suppose now I should rabbled on quite a bit to begin with. I should actually mention a bit about the animals.
It's important to recognise the fact that, you know, exploration and this sense of wonder about something unknown, whether the comets or the oceans, it's what drives scientists and people to, you know, explore these things. And from this we get this amazing richness of information, natural world, whether it's new wildlife, new geology, new understanding of how our planet works. I think this idea of the wonder of our planet and the unknown is something that's quite important, I think.
It is. I think the biggest drive for scientists is knowing there's so much more to be discovered out there. It's a massive drive to think, yes, what more can we find out? Incredible things you can find out. And one of the major questions, coming on more into the animal side, and one of the major questions about the oceans was, where did life itself begin? Because there was a lot of evidence that it suggesting it began in the oceans, but where and how did it begin? That's always been quite a major thing. And
did you get in your courses? Do you call it from the primordial soup? Have you ever heard that word?
That sounds familiar. I think that sounds really familiar.
For the generic term of how life began, they will say it starts off as the primordial soup. I've never actually understood what that means.
I was thinking, what that white soup? What, really?
I remember my lecturer sometimes saying, from the origin of life, from the primordial soup. We should Google that, see what that actually means.
I know. I don't. It sounds familiar, but couldn't actually say what it was. But fair enough. But in recent times, scientists do believe that life itself did actually begin from hydrothermal vents that exist on the sea floor. Now, these hydrothermal vents are basically, do correct me if I'm wrong, Ekbal, because this is more kind of your field than mine, but they're kind of are they like fissures that kind of open up in there?
No, they're basically regions where hot water is managed to get into the ground from the surface of the oceans, from the surface of the seabed into the ground, and where it's hotter in the ground. So these are not normally by places where you have mid-ocean ridges, where it's hotter closer to the surface. So the water goes in and comes back out, and it comes back out through these holes in the ground, call it, and these are what you call hydrothermal vents, and they play a huge role in the heat management of the ocean floors. And people didn't realize how important these were until a few decades ago. Actually,
they didn't know, and they are actually. Some of the vents are actually referred to more commonly as black smokers. I don't know if people at home have ever heard them. We always referred to them as black smokers as well. And I've seen videos of these things. They look quite terrifying, don't they? Just these kind of holes in the ground that kind of billow out all this black smoke. And
all that, they make towers, right? They're really high. I don't remember. I don't know off the top of my head how tall they can get, but they can get meters to tens of meters high, I think.
They can be huge, like I said, towers that just kind of billow out all this smoke and all hot water and all this, and actually people did observe that there was a lot of sea life on the kind of slopes of these kind of big kind of towers that were forming, and obviously it was more preferable for things like bacteria and small organisms around here. And there's higher, there's kind of like higher metals released from these vents, isn't there?
There's a lot of mineral richness, mineral-rich fluids coming out of this. So these waters go into the ground and they come back out and they carry out all the mineral riches from beneath the ground, which is why they're black, because it's full of certain oxides or sulfates and things like that make these colours and towers, because they deposit all the rocks as the minerals as the water comes out.
And of course it's ideal for the organisms because they get all these nutrients that they need, really, don't they? And yeah, they reckon that life did actually begin on these black smokers, and because in fact fossils have been found, and these are really primitive bacteria fossils dating from like 1.5 billion years ago, something like that. So the very early forms of life, and beyond as well. This they have found like loads of these fossils dating back to this.
I think the earliest fossils are like 3.2 billion years.
I think it was. I'm trying to remember. I think it was 3.5 billion year old clumps of bacteria have been found like near these slopes, and they've actually found that they seem to be more like dominant in shallow water rather than the deep oceans. So they reckon that this is kind of where life could have possibly begun, because it was ideal for them.
Because it's really interesting. So most life on the surface of our planet relies on the sun. It needs sunlight. It's photosynthesis, whatever. Sunlight is the main source of energy for life, and the nutrients for growth. Whereas if you're on the bottom of the ocean, you don't have sunlight.
You don't know.
And in the early days of the planets, there was the huge hazes of clouds, of gases, etc. on the surface of the in the atmosphere. So there wasn't much sunlight getting to the surface. So some people think that if the life couldn't have survived on the surface anyway. Whereas in these deep oceans with these vents, they had lots of minerals coming out, and these organisms are generally not what you call, let me get this right, I think they're chemosynthetic animals because they use chemical synthesis. So they make the energy using chemistry rather than sunlight.
Chemosynthesis, yeah, that's correct.
And they use the minerals coming out of these vents to make their own livelihood energy and source of food and nutrients.
Yeah, and it's very true. They do believe that chemosynthesis did predate photosynthesis, obviously, because it started back then. They used to get their energy from these chemicals, and they reckon that yes, life did form from these vents, which is quite incredible. Quite incredible that we've narrowed it down to one feature.
We came from black smokers.
Yep,
that sounds ominous, doesn't it?
It really does. So now we know where we came from, these holes in the deep, deep ocean. And obviously since then, life in the ocean has kind of exploded, really. There's so much diversity in corals and like all the animals we get there, and it is absolutely incredible. And a lot of the animals we don't know about yet. There's so much down there that we've no idea, no idea about.
But apparently every single time a diver goes, usually they're unmanned nowadays, but every single time they go to a black smoker, they discover a new species there. It's quite incredible. Not just one, there's usually like 20, 30 per dive. Which is quite incredible, I think. It's like,
must be so many that we just don't know about. And some of the really deep ocean creatures that we have discovered are terrifying, aren't they? Absolutely terrifying. And like the anglerfish, for example, if you've watched Finding Nemo, like you'll know that one, the one with the light that kind of dangles the big teeth. Those things, yes, they do actually exist outside the animations, and they are pretty terrifying.
They're quite amazing, though. I mean, it's amazing how evolution has decided to adapt to this whole world of darkness.
It has,
by making its own light. I mean, the blob that falls is in front of the anglerfish has its own light. Is that right?
It does, yeah. It has its own light, and this is the same as well, which is going to come on to with the bioluminescence. And this is something that I find absolutely incredible. Basically, there aren't many photons of light down there, which is kind of the light energy. But the organisms take in what little they can get. Even though it's pitch blackness, they take in the little light energy that's there, and they use that to radiate these kind of colours from their body, which doesn't use up as much energy. And they can use that to communicate to other individuals, their species. They can use it as a warning to others, and things like that. And like the anglerfish, it uses it as the
bait.
light. Yeah, it uses it as bait, because that's how the anglerfish got its name. It fishes for its prey, which is quite incredible. And there's so many things down there that are completely awesome, I would just say.
I'd be terrified to go down personally, but I still can appreciate how spectacularly amazing life must be down there.
I mean, I would like to see the person who first discovered the anglerfish. They must have been like, what the heck is this? It must have been quite incredible.
Well, I don't know the time, but I think it was last year they made the first ever film of a giant squid. Is that right?
Yeah,
do you remember
I think I've heard of this.
Off the coast of Japan.
Yes.
Because we all know the giant squid exists because we've seen dead specimens wash up on the shore, but no one has managed to see one in the wild, mainly because they live so deep in the water usually, and they are, I don't know, if you find the video, we'll post it on our Facebook page, because they look like the most extraordinary animals, don't they? The most beautiful colours and iridescent oranges. I mean, they've adapted to survive in this dark, deep, cold parts of the oceans, and it's quite spectacular. I really love it.
It really is. It's just all life down there is just so incredible. So incredible. It excites. I could so become a marine zoologist. It really does excite me so much. Anyway, we have waffled on a bit, so we're going to have a short break now, and we're going to have our first song, and this is really nice song. I love this song so much. It's Hall of Fame by The Script. So please enjoy, and we're back in a minute.
Yeah, you can be the greatest, you can be the best, you can be the King Kong banging on your chest. You can beat the world, you can beat the war, you can talk to God, go banging on his door. You can throw your hands up, you can beat the clock. You can move a mountain, you can break rocks. You could be a master, don't wait for luck. Dedicate yourself and you go find yourself standing in the Hall of Fame. Yeah. And the world's gonna know your name. Yeah. 'Cause you burn with the burst flame. Yeah. And the world's gonna know your name. Yeah. And you'll be on the walls of the Hall of Fame. You can go the distance, you can run the mile. You can walk straight through hell with a smile. You could be the hero, you could get the gold. Breaking all the records they thought never could be broke. Yeah, do it for your people, do it for your pride. Are you ever gonna know if you never even try? Do it for your country, do it for your name. 'Cause there's gonna be a day when you're standing in the Hall of Fame. Yeah. And the world's gonna know your name. Yeah. 'Cause you burn with the burst flame. Yeah. And the world's gonna know your name. Yeah. And you'll be on the walls of the Hall of Fame. Be a champion. Be a champion. Be a champion. Be a champion. On the walls of the Hall of Fame. Be students, be teachers, be politicians, be preachers. Yeah. Be believers, be leaders, be astronauts, be champions, be truth seekers. Be students, be teachers, be politicians, be preachers. Yeah. Be believers, be leaders, be astronauts, be champions. Standing in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the world's gonna know your name. Yeah, yeah, yeah. 'Cause you burn with the burst flame. Yeah. And the world's gonna know your name. Yeah. And you'll be on the walls of the Hall of Fame. You can be the greatest, you can be the best. You can be the champ card hanging on your chest. You can be the girl, you can be the world. You can be a champion hanging on his wall. You can throw your hands up, you can beat the clock. You can move a mountain, you can break rocks. You can be a master, don't wait for luck. Dedicate yourself and you'll find yourself standing in the Hall of Fame.
Well, that was Hall of Fame by The Script. And we're going to go back now to talking about some of the phenomena, really, about in the oceans. So, there's, like I said before, there's lots of incredible things to be discovered. Now, these are some of the incredible things people have often seen on the surface of the oceans and thought, wow, what's this all about? And the one that comes to mind to me straight away is the convergence of the Baltic and the North Sea, which, if you have ever seen it, is quite incredible. From pictures looking at it, it's just such a clear divide between the two oceans, isn't it? The two different colours of either side. It's absolutely incredible.
We should tell people what it is. What's so spectacular about this is that two ocean bodies, water bodies, meet in this one place by the Baltic Sea, and usually when two water sources come together, they mix. Right? If you have like a milk and water, they'll just mix together to become this watery, milky substance. Whereas in this region, the two water bodies meet and they don't mix. The divide is beautifully straight and clear.
It's pretty incredible.
We should post a picture on the Facebook page later.
Yeah, because you would not believe how clear this. I mean, when I went to South Africa a couple of years ago and we stood at the Cape of Good Hope, you could see the Atlantic Ocean and the place that the Indian Ocean meets it. And you could sort of see a divide by looking like on one side of the sea and then the other, but it wasn't defined by such a clear line as this is, because this is literally just a line that goes through the ocean and just cuts it in half. It's quite incredible, and this is definitely on my list of amazing things that have been discovered.
Moses passed through there.
Apparently so.
He didn't really.
He divided it for us to make all these pretty features.
But what's really interesting is, does that reflect on the wildlife, natural populations within the two ocean bodies, or do they?
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, to my knowledge, it doesn't affect the different wildlife as such. Maybe the wildlife that's around there is adapted to the kind of these two temperatures. They're quite temperature tolerant. The ones that are around there, I couldn't imagine that. Creatures that are very not tolerant to these temperatures would be able to.
Yeah, that's true.
Would be able to cross between it. But
what's the cause of this? Is it salt or temperature, or is there some chemical reasons to it as well? Do you know, or do we know even? Does anybody know?
It reckons to do with the different densities of the ocean, so maybe to do with temperature differences and things. And
all right,
that's the impression I've got from reading it as well. It is a bit unclear. There've been many kind of things put forward as to why this does happen. So that's just one of the suggestions, really, as to why it's got such a perfect divide. But it is pretty incredible thing to see, isn't it?
It's quite spectacular.
It's just incredible that nature can create these things. But moving on as well to another feature which is quite incredible is the steaming Black Sea. And this is a feature that I've actually only read about yesterday, and I thought this is actually it's something else that's quite incredible. And this is caused by the humidity of the ocean water counteracting with the coolness of the wind that kind of goes over the ocean. The ocean is really warm, but the wind is really cool, and it apparently causes the ocean to smoke slightly. And this confused people for a long time. They're like, "Wait, what's going on here?" But you're like deep in thought there, Ekbal. Like, wow,
that's
really?
quite cool. That's quite cool.
Yeah,
actually.
It is pretty impressive.
I'll be honest, I didn't hear about that before. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I could tell by your face. You're like, wow, does it? But no, when I read this last night, I thought that is quite cool. That the difference in temperatures between the ocean and the air temperature, it actually causes it to smoke. So there you go. And if you've ever seen Pirates of the Caribbean, you'll know this next one very well, which is the green flash, which is basically what happens sometimes when the sun goes down. It emits kind of a green flash, like not like a massive thing, just like very subtly. And you can see this on land as well, but they do say that you can see it better if you watch the sunset over the oceans. And they reckon this is an effect of the something to do with the Earth's atmosphere causing the light to do this crazy thing. It's quite incredible.
I don't think anybody actually knows why
that
happens.
I've seen a lot of videos. If you go on YouTube, there are a lot of videos where people have stood like on the shore of a sea and watched the sunset, and you could even potentially see it as well if you ever stood on a beach and you watch the sun go down, and it's literally just as the sun sinks below the horizon, you just see this glint of green just before it goes down, and it is quite an incredible phenomenon. It's that Pirates of the Caribbean has made quite famous because it does feature heavily in one of their movies. Now, I did mention before about there are things that have been discovered that suggest alien activity, and you're rolling your eyes at that one. And I actually read up about this one last year. There's something called the Baltic Sea Anomaly, which has been discovered accidentally by divers in 2011. And basically divers were in the Baltic Sea and they found this 60-metre thick circular entity in the water. And this thing is huge.
You mean a spaceship?
Yeah.
They found a spaceship in the sea.
They do reckon that they have found this kind of spaceship which measures, they think it's around about 300 metres across, so it's quite big. And, they have had photos. Well, I don't know if it was photos today. I think it was more all the pictures I've seen of it have basically been artist impressions. So I don't know if they actually have photos of it. It's just what the divers have described that they saw. I don't know how much work has been done on this, whether people have been down again to see what this is, but or maybe, as some of the skeptics will say, it's another thing the government's trying to cover up, so they haven't been down there for that reason. But I don't know. It's something I've heard of. I was quite curious about it, I have to admit.
It's probably just a geological feature.
We'll send you down there, and I'm sure you can tell us what it is. But this is one of the incredible things they've discovered in the oceans. And going aside from alien activity as well, there are things such as lost cities that have been found there, such as the Gates of Alexandria, just off the coast of the city of Alexandria. There are these ancient gates that back in the times when the Egyptians were at their highest power, they reckon that for whatever reason since then it's been submerged in the water. So there are lots of absolutely incredible things to be found in the oceans, absolutely incredible, and it's just happy that more can be discovered. So got that to look forward to. I want to go diving again now. Just really want to go.
I get vertigo when I'm in the sea. Can you believe that?
Really?
Yeah, one of the things I don't like diving. I'm not very good with heights to begin with, but when I'm in the sea, it feels like there's so much more height.
You just don't want to go down there. Don't want to go down there.
That's quite bad.
But I went diving a few years ago, and I went wreck diving in Malta, and that is quite incredible. Seeing like these features in the water, like oh wow, that's some of those ones on the surface that's now covered in coral and fish and things. It's the underwater is just an incredible new world, and if you haven't been scuba diving, I suggest you do. It is really incredible. Anyway, Ekbal, would you like to take off from here? You've got some.
Yeah, I guess
fascinating
5
stories
minutes.
I have waffled on a bit today. I'm sorry. So
well, I'm going to start off by naming and shaming you. Then I'm going to ask you a question. Where is the tallest mountain in the world?
Well, I want to say Everest, but I have a feeling by the way you're looking at me, that's probably not right.
Everest is the highest mountain in the world. There is a slight subtle difference between tallest and highest.
Really?
And I'll tell you why I'm talking about mountains when it's an ocean theme, because it does relate. Because the height of a mountain or something, a feature like a mountain or something like that, is from sea level. Okay, from sea level. So the height of Everest from sea level is the highest mountain on the planet. It's 8,848 meters actually, Everest. Whereas in the tallness of a mountain is measured from the base of the mountain to the top. And in that respect, the tallest mountain in the world is actually Mauna Kea in Hawaii. Because Hawaii is an island, but the island starts on the bottom of the sea. And the mountain roots start at the bottom of the sea in Hawaii for Mauna Kea, which means from the base of the mountain to the top, Mauna Kea is 10,100 meters high.
Wow.
That's a full 2 kilometers almost higher than Everest.
That is quite incredible. So technically cool, Everest should be stripped of its name. It's not
and technically Mauna Kea is a volcano.
So is it still growing?
I don't know if Mauna Kea is still growing, but there's other volcanoes on Big Island of Hawaii that are growing. So I don't think Mauna Kea is growing. I don't think it's active still, actually. I'm not sure. Volcanologists reply, is Mauna Kea active?
So Everest has a fake name. That's not good.
Well, Everest is still the highest mountain in the world.
Okay, so technically the highest, just not the tallest.
No. But in Everest's defense, Everest is getting taller every year. Higher every year. By about a centimeter. Because the only reason Everest is there is because of, which will actually lead on to my next topic quite nicely, is when India was next to Africa at one point, and it split off from Africa, plate tectonics and all that, and swam through the Indian Ocean, and punched into Asia. And that impact is what made the Himalayan mountain chain. And you can see it yourself, if you have a carpet and you just scrunch up a carpet, they start buckling, right?
Yes.
And that's exactly how it works on the surface of the planet, with bigger carpets. And that's exactly how an Everest and the Himalayan ranges were made. And the interesting thing is, India is still plunging into Asia by about 5 centimeters every single year. So the Indian continent punches into Asia by about 5 centimeters every single year, which means you're still buckling your carpet.
It's still causing the mountains
to grow. And mountains still growing by a little bit less than a centimeter per year, which will probably take a good few million years to catch up to Mauna Kea still, but potentially.
Potentially, we'll see.
Wait for a few million years, see what happens.
And then measure it again.
The next thing I want to talk about is actually something that led on to the India colliding, etc. Something called the Wilson cycle, which is a really big, grand cycle of how the continents move around on the surface of our planets, the plate tectonics. There's the birth. What I wanted to talk about is one aspect of it is the life cycle of an ocean. It's like us, like all human beings, we have a life cycle. We have a birth, an adolescence, a middle age, an old age, and then ultimately, unfortunately, we all pass away. And the oceans have a similar life cycle, believe it or not. And there's examples of these all over our planet. So, for example, if I tell you that in the East African Rift, how much time do I have? In the East,
this is going to take a while to explain.
in East Africa, I don't know whether you guys know the Rift Valley. Have you heard of the Rift Valley?
Of course, the Rift Valley.
Good.
Yes.
That is actually the valley is there only because Eastern Africa, like Somalia and those in the Horn of Africa, that part of Africa, and the rest of Africa, are moving away from each other. They're splitting apart. And that's what's made this valley down Eastern Africa. And essentially, in the northern tip of that, by Ethiopia and a place called Afar, which, another plug, my supervisor, Tim Wright, is studying in the School of Earth and Environment. Plug. Actually,
Another one.
You should read Tim's papers on this, The Birth of an Ocean. They're really interesting. Because that's
That's
actually
awesome,
where
yes.
an ocean is being born in Africa, in Ethiopia. The land is split so much. It's so thin now, it's actually just about an ocean. That an ocean is being born in the East African Rift. That is quite incredible. And we can all see it. This is why it's so important to study it. And that's why my supervisor is so good. You get to go there and study it. It's quite amazing. So that's the birth of an ocean in Africa. It's happening now. You can see it. What's next is what we call the adolescence of an ocean. It starts spreading apart. The water gets deeper. The more water, starts getting older, etc. That's what we'd call the Atlantic. The Atlantic Ocean is in its adolescence.
Oh, okay.
Because the Atlantic wasn't there a long time ago. It was just South America and Africa were stuck together. You can see the jigsaw puzzle, and they're split apart to make the Atlantic.
It's kind of a teenager ocean.
It's like a teenager ocean.
It's
yes.
throwing fits.
It's
and
throwing fits and
gaining spots.
Yes, exactly. So that's the teenager ocean, and it's still growing bigger. The Atlantic is still getting bigger. So Europe and America are still moving away from each other by about 2 centimeters every year. But good thing or bad thing, it's up to you to decide. But
we're witnessing an ocean going through puberty.
Exactly. Puberty for an ocean. There you go. So the Atlantic is the adolescence of an ocean. It's a proper ocean. It's getting bigger, and it's got lots of water, etc. And the old age of an ocean is the Pacific. The Pacific is like the granddaddy of the ocean. It's huge. It's massive. It's the biggest it's going to get, and it's actually started to shrink. And now, on the edge of the Pacific are the subduction and trenches, where the Pacific Ocean is disappearing back into the Earth's mantle, and it's actually it's getting smaller. And in a few million years' time, it will get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. This is its death. It's dying. Sorry, Sorry, Pacific. But yeah, it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller until it completely disappears.
Wow! Imagine a world without the Pacific.
World without the Pacific. Actually, the final stages of an ocean, you can see it in the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean is the last dying splurts of an ocean. Where the Mediterranean was now was a beautiful, vast ocean called the Iapetus.
Beautiful name.
It's nice, isn't it? Between Africa and Asia, there's a great big ocean, just the size of the Atlantic. Actually, it's a huge ocean called the Iapetus. I don't remember time. I think it was like 300 million years ago, but don't quote me on that. I'm not sure. But yeah, there was a huge ocean there, and it all closed up, and everything fizzled away, and the only thing that's left of it is the Mediterranean. So there we go. The birth of an ocean in Africa, the adolescence in the Atlantic, the old age and the wise old man
grey
in
hairs.
Pacific, grey hairs, and the final dying
Shouting at the teenagers
splurts in the Mediterranean. Yes. There we go.
That is quite incredible.
It's called her.
Nice
That's something of the Wilson cycle. I think it's quite incredible that you can play these life games with our planet. Really, it's quite cool.
It is. It is. As I said, really incredible. I'm starting to think we should probably time. Count how many times we say incredible on this show, because we seem to say there's so many fascinating things we talk about. It's like wow.
But it's great. I think it's reasonable because we live on such an incredible planet. There are so much things to see, learn, experience.
There are.
And it is the most. It is unique in our solar system. Plate tectonics and things like that is the way it works on our Earth is unique. But we don't think there's anything like it anywhere else in the solar system, which makes it really special.
And it is amazing.
Of course,
absolutely
and because
amazing.
we're here, of course, it's amazing.
Of course, we make it cool.
And one last thing. So we talked about the death of an ocean and how it starts disappearing under the mantle. Where the ocean starts disappearing into the mantle, it is a place where we call subduction zones. In geologists will know what they are. It's where, an ocean hits a barrier and starts going into the mantle, and it makes a big hole, basically. It makes a big valley in the ocean floor. And these are actually some of the deepest parts deepest parts of our planet, actually, on the surface of our planet. Do you know how deep and what the deepest part of the oceans is?
Oh, I can't think how deep it is. Is it somewhere near Indonesia?
It's close, yes.
Somewhere close there. It's that part of the world, depth 2,000 meters. I'm way off, aren't I?
You're way off, I'm afraid.
Oh, okay.
It's in a place called Marianas Trench, which is it's in the Pacific Ocean, east of Indonesia and south of Japan. And it is essentially the deepest part of the world. And the deepest part in there is a place called Challenger Deep. You might have heard of this because it was in the news a few years ago, and I'll explain why. It is literally the deepest part on the surface of our planet. And because this is where the Pacific Ocean is disappearing into the mantle beneath Japan and Indonesia. And it's actually 10,916 meters deep.
Wow, I really was way off, wasn't I?
It was a big dive.
That's a huge dive. Absolutely, wow. That's very deep.
Yeah. And can you believe it?
I can't even imagine that.
Only 3 people have ever seen it.
The bottom?
At the bottom. So 3 men have been to the bottom. In 1960, the US Navy sent 2 people in a glorified metal ball. Call it that. In 1960, I don't know what else you can call it.
A thick metal ball.
It was a thick metal ball, basically. 2 men, probably the bravest people on the planet at the time. This is before we sent people to Mars, to the moon even. They just got dropped in a giant metal ball to this trench, and I think it's called Jakes Pickard and Lieutenant Don Walsh. They were the first people ever to
Has
go
anyone
down
been
there.
back since?
In 1960, and no one was brave enough to try it again since 2012. And believe it or not, the guy who did it in 2012, he did it on his own, is James Cameron, the film director.
What?
Yep, James Cameron, the guy who directed Avatar and Terminator T2. He went down he's the 3rd man ever to go down to Challenger Deep.
Okay, wow, that was not the person I would be expecting to have gone down there, but okay.
Fact of the week.
Hats off to him then if he's been down.
Because James Cameron is an avid explorer. He loves exploration, and in a particular ocean.
Well, it comes through in his films.
Fascination for it. And he helped design and fund partially this new submersible he designed called, what was it called? Deep Sea Challenger, of course. And yeah, he did it all on his own. He went down on his own, a solo dive. And yeah, you can read the National Geographic reports. Again, we'll post that at some point on the Facebook page. Yeah, there you go. Fact of the week. James Cameron, the film director, was the 3rd person ever in the 2nd dive to go to the deepest parts of our oceans.
Well, hats off to him then.
Hats off to him.
Massive hats off to him. Well, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. So I hope you've enjoyed our very ocean-themed show today. If you have any questions, or want to ask us any question at all, then like our Facebook page and comment or send us a message on there, and we'll try and get back to you. You can follow either me or Ekbal on Twitter. Our Twitter accounts are also on the Facebook page. So yes, unfortunately we have to be off now, but to kind of in theme with what we've talked about today, we're going to play a very classic song, which is, I think I say this about every song, one of my favourites.
It is a beautiful song.
It is a beautiful song, and this is Beyond the Sea by Bob Dylan, and we will see you next week.
Somewhere beyond the sea, somewhere waiting for me, my lover stands on golden sands and watches the ships that go sailing. Somewhere beyond the sea, she's there watching for me. If I could fly like birds on high, then straight to her arms I'd go sailing. It's far
a star, it's near beyond the moon. I know beyond a doubt my heart will lead me there soon. We'll meet beyond the shore, we'll kiss just as before. Happy we'll be beyond the sea, and never again I'll go sailing. My heart will lead me there soon. We'll meet, I know we'll meet beyond the shore. We'll kiss just as before. Happy we'll be beyond the sea, and never again I'll go sailing. So long.